Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Captain Jeff. Last week we did a video. We asked you guys to send in your questions to do a Q&A video, and it was overwhelming. We had over 60 questions in a matter of like 2 days. We had to kind of slow it down from there. We're going to try to get to the best questions, and thanks so much for participating.
All right, our first question comes from Jonathan Griffin on YouTube. Snook in the rocks, can't get them to bite anything. I'll get snapper to come out with chum, try DOA shrimp, live shrimp, dead shrimp, squid, even pilchards. I'll land it right in front of them and they won't bite. Any tips?
I'm not sure how big these fish are that you're talking about, but listen, when they're hanging out in the rocks and they're hanging out in the sand, they want to eat late at night. Most of the big snook pictures you see them in the darkness. You see them late at night. They also want big baits, so get rid of them shrimps and pilchards and DOAs and start using something like a hog leg, a pinfish, a sand perch, a ladyfish, something good, dog. Step up your game and you'll get them snooks. Thanks for the question.
Hey, our next question is from YouTube. It's from Ricky DeBoliak. Hey Jeff, it's a bass guy here. My question is, what is a good all-around rod and reel setup for someone like me that wants to catch these snook and tarpon off the beach?
Ricky DeBoliak, a bass guy. You know, I know Ricky DeBoliak. He's been a fan for a long time, and it doesn't surprise me that he's asking questions about tackle for tarpon and snooks. These bass dudes are using like 20, 30, 50-pound braid to catch 3, 5, 6, 10, 12-pound fish. So I understand where you're coming from with the tackle questions. Now, Ricky, here's what I got to tell you. When you're fishing for the bigger fish, tarpon are say over 40 pounds, bigger jacks over 10 pounds, bigger snooks over 20 pounds. You want to get you a 7-foot. You could use a bait caster or you could use a spin tackle, whatever you're more comfortable with. But remember, you're going to be using a big bait, about as big as them bass you've been catching. When you use that, you're going to need a rod. You're going to need a rod with some backbone. You're also going to need a ton of backing. If you get a big fish on the beach, he's going to run off 100, 150 yards. Nothing like them snooks. Nothing like them little bass you guys play with. Even a snook will run off 60, 70 yards a ride. So make sure you get a 7-footer. Make sure you get some backbone in it. Now, the other fish you're going to catch off the beach are going to be small. They're going to be in the trough, and they're going to want small stuff. Get you a medium, light, 10 to 12 pounds, something that you could probably use for bass. Run that dog right there in the trough with the small baits. You'll be all set, Ricky. Thanks for the question.
All right, the next question is from Kayak Fishing Offshore. It's a YouTube channel. Yo, Big Dog, got a question for you. What is the average depth that you recommend fishing the beaches from a boat during the bait run? Fishing for tarpon, that is.
Kayak dude, huh? You know, love the kayak dudes because they're always asking for stickers. They've been certifying their kayaks, and we love that over here at the Lunker Dog. Now, look at here. You want to get as close to the bait and the action as you can with that kayak without breaking any laws. I do the same thing in the skiff. You know, you go out there, you see the bait, you're going to see the activity, you're going to see the birds. You got to get as close as you possibly can to that stuff. The problem is you're not allowed too close to shore. So, play the game. Get as close as you can without breaking the law. Sometimes you got to chunk it real far. I know you got good practice in your kayak. You other kayakers, practice long chunks because it's going to help you out during the mullet run. Thanks for the question, and run that dog.
All right, the next question comes from David Reyes. He's a YouTuber. Jeff, what pound braid and fluorocarbon would you recommend for tarpon?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Braid and fluorocarbon. Now look at here. Captain Jeff will use the top shot of braid on a good amount of time. And that's because we're fishing for big fish with anglers that take a long time to get to the boat. So I want about 100 feet of braid. I'll use 30-pound test braid on the medium setups and 50-pound test braid on the big setups. Fluorocarbon I don't really play with. I like my baits to float real natural, especially when I'm using smaller baits and mullets. I want them to be able to swim. That fluorocarbon is awfully stiff and it often impedes the action of the bait. So I don't really use fluorocarbon. So I hope that helps you out. Thanks for the question, and run that dog.
All right, the next question is from YouTuber Peter Karev. Any specific size the mullet have to be for tarpon?
No, the tarpon will eat little tiny mullets. You know, when the mullet run first starts, we often get the little tiny finger mullets. And big tarpon will eat those little tiny things. Remember, the tarpon's going to key in on the bait that's most abundant and the most that he can load up on. If the fish is 20 pounds, he's going to load up on those fingers. That don't mean the big fish won't load up on the fingers, but when those big mullets start coming through, the big fish are going to switch to the big mullets. Now, if they're eating the big mullets and you throw big mullets out with the little mullets, sometimes that can trigger the strikes. Hope that helps you out. Happy bait and good luck during this mullet run.
All right, our next question comes from Hunter Sills. He's a YouTuber. What are the best lures to use for beach fishing during the run for snook and tarpon?
Best lures for beach fishing? You're asking the wrong guy, dude. You're asking the wrong guy. Now, I seen dudes catch them on all sorts of different stuff. If I was beach fishing and I was to use a plug, it would probably be a reflecto spoon. A reflecto spoon in the surf is deadly. They see that flash, they see that little yellow feather coming off the back, and I've had days where we caught multiple snooks on those reflecto spoons. And remember, you're also going to get jacks, ladyfish, all sorts of bluefish in the mullet run. And I've seen guys throw a lot of different stuff. Now, if you're specifically going for the big snooks and big tarpon, throw something big. That guy up in Fort Pierce, Chris Beachwalker, he uses the Crystal Minnow. These are all plug throwing fools. It's hard to ask me that question, but thanks anyway. Run that dog.
Our next question is from YouTuber Brian Villa. What's the best hook for genuine 6 to 10-inch hog leg? Circle hook, what brand, size, etc.?
Real simple. Go with a 5/0 VMC tournament style circle hook. It gives you plenty of gap. It doesn't weigh down the baits. It can work real well with a big bait and also can work pretty good with a small bait. So that's a good start. You know, if the baits get really tiny, you got to go down. If the baits get really big, you got to go up. But start off with the 5/0 tournament VMC circle hook.
This question's from YouTuber Carter Salmons. What month is the bait usually the thickest?
September and the beginning of October. If I could pick the best month, it would be right in the middle there. So give me the last 2 weeks of September, the first 2 weeks of October, and that's going to be the most consistent. Now remember, we're talking about Broward County down here. Right now in Fort Pierce, Sebastian, all up yonder by Stewart, those guys are loaded with bait, and Happy Bait is really there, and it's starting to become full effect. And it's just now beginning of September, last day of August. Now it's already going off. As the bait comes down, the dates change. Here in Broward County, we're looking second week of September to the second week of October. That's usually the peak. Run that dog.
There's a question from YouTuber Kung Fu Tattoo. Is there a specific water temperature range that you do or do not like to fish?
Never check the water temperature. You know, I know approximately what the water temperature is, but the big thing with the water temperature is it's not changing drastically. Okay, especially going down. If the water temperature is going down, you know, 1.5, half a degree each day, the fish often clam up until it stables off. Now, it doesn't really matter what temperature it actually gets to as long as it get too crazy cold, but it'll stable off. When it stables off, the fish will adjust, and then you can expect the bites again. Now, on the way down, it's real tough. So, you know, you never know. Now, during this migration, this fall migration, we're going to have the big change. When the fish feel the change, they get real hungry and they try to fatten up before it gets cold. So I hope that helps you out, and thanks for the question.
All right, we're going to mix it up to some questions from Instagram. This is from Instagram, I am Pete Polo. Do you know when the mullet run will be coming to the Tampa St. Pete area and how to follow, or when is the mullet run?
Look at here. That's West Coast stuff right there. Old Captain Jeff ain't really an expert on West Coast stuff. Why don't you ask the Mad Snooker, I don't know, Dave Justice. Dude, there's a whole bunch of dudes that are fishing that Skyline Bridge that are in the social network. Talk to them. They can probably give you a better understanding of that whole West Coast thing than Captain Jeff. Thanks for the question, and run that dog.
Here's the one from Instagrammer Evan Dennis. When tarpon are blowing up the mullets on the beach, are you casting into where the fish are hitting or towards the outside of the school of mullets?
Well, every day's a little bit different, you know. Sometimes the fish you're aggressively eating right in the mullet, and you see a lot of explosions and a lot of splashes, and what's happening is those fish are going through the mullet, they're injuring the mullet, then swimming back through and picking them off. At that point, and you see that happening, chunk it right in there in the middle of all the mullets. Now, on the other times, you see the mullets all balled up, but not a whole ton of action. Now, those tarpon will be laying on the outskirts of the school, and they'll just kind of skirt the school. And in that particular situation, you won't see quite as much, you know, splashing and like hardcore eating from the tarpon. Then, chunk it on the side of the school where you see them rolling. Try to get in front of their face. If they see that singled out mullet in distress, your chances are good of hooking one. Now, look at here. It's fishing. So, some days you're going to get 10 hits, other days you're going to get no hits. Thanks for the question, and good luck. Happy bait during this year's mullet run.
This is a kind of a follow-up question here from Instagrammer Chase Diskins. How do you get tarpon to hit your mullet and not the other 1,000 in the school?
Well, that's why I'm Captain Jeff. Look at here. I can get the tarpons to hit my mullets. Last year, Andy Mill went down and did like 2 sessions with him and his son, and they were all into the fish but couldn't get the strikes. I told them to come on down to Fort Lauderdale, took them out there, and we got the strikes. Now look at here. It takes time. It takes practice. Pay attention to what's going on down there. Now, when we're down there doing happy bait, it's the same dudes every season that seem to land the fish. And that's because it's practice, practice, practice. I try to help, but there's not much I can tell you beside that. Stick with it. Days you're going to get more hits, other days you ain't. Good luck and run that dog.
There's another question from an Instagrammer, Evan Kumela. He's a big fan. I have a 12-foot cast net, 24 diameter. I'm 13. I can pancake it, but it's really heavy. What size would you recommend?
Woo! 24-foot diameter. Congratulations on being able to pancake that thing. That's real guy stuff right there. That's an awful lot of net. I'm not sure what you're trying to catch, but I use like 7-foot nets, and more times than not, it's more bait than I can pull into the boat and use. So I recommend a 7 to 8-foot net. The thing about that is when bait's thin, you get a little bit more, let's call it, you're more limber. You can throw the net further, you can throw the net faster. And when the bait's a little bit thin, that's often more effective. That 12-foot net, I never get a chance of using that big. Now, I've seen some guys offshore, huge schools of whitebait with them, and if that's what you're doing, knock yourself out. But like, I'm using a 7 to 8-foot net, and I like it to be limber, and I like to be able to throw fast. Hope that helps you out. Good luck. Happy bait.
All right, we're back. This is YouTuber Venomous Villain. Jeff, is there any specific bottom structures or areas where tarpon like to hang out?
Well, yeah. I mean, realize that we're fishing for tarpon year-round. And different times of the year, they want to do different things. For instance, in the middle of the winter, they're going to pick usually deeper spots where the water temperature doesn't change that much, and they're going to congregate there. During the summer, in the middle of the day, they're going to get into the deeper channels, usually closer to the salt water where most of the bait is, and they're going to hang out there. So, the question you're asking me, changes according to the seasons and what the tarpon are doing. There's certain structures that fish like to hang up in. Any place the tide can funnel in and out. Any place there's some sort of structure with some shade and that kind of thing they seem to like. So I hope that helps you out, and good luck this year, and good luck with that tarpon fishing.
Here's YouTuber Josh White. Would you recommend keeping live bait in your garage for the year so I have mullet all year long?
If you can store them like that, yeah, I'd recommend it. But listen, mullet are hard to store. If you can get 24, 48 hours out of, 24, 50, or 60 mullets, you're doing real good. Don't expect them to store them much longer than that. If it's cool out, you might be able to store them in a pen, hanging off the dock somewhere. But for the most part, I recommend you getting some nice fresh mullet every day. If you can store them overnight, like for an early morning trip, great. But you want that fresh mullet that can really swim good, because that's going to trigger the strikes.
All right, here's another question from a YouTuber. This is Salt Life 316. With flounder season coming up, can you give me some advice on flounder fishing?
Flounder fishing, absolutely, dude. Captain Jeff's an expert on flounder fishing. Look at here, when you're flounder fishing, it's important to hold your mouth right. If you hold your mouth right, you can expect to catch good fish. Also go with the fresh bait, and you got to get the hook that has a tiny barb on the back of it. You guys are using sea worms and clams, and things are slippery, and they often slide off your hook. Good luck with the flounders, and if you get a whole bunch of them, send me some FedEx. Love them all fried up.
Here's a question from Jonathan Najera. What kind of game fish usually hang around the mullets this time of year, and what is the best way to increase the chances of catching the game fish during this period with so many mullet around? It's a commonly asked question.
Dude, these are kind of like the same questions, but look at during the mullet run, you're going to be able to catch almost everything that is inshore. Everything is in that bait, and they're eating. You can get ladyfish, bluefish, pompano. I've even seen people catch redfish and things. I mean, pretty much everything. Sharks, tarpon, blah, blah, blah. Dude, get out there. The more days you're out there, the more good things are going to happen to you. Not every day is a great day, but you can get some phenomenal days during the mullet run. Good luck. Thanks for the question.
Here's a question from YouTuber Zombie Weasel. What color braid do you recommend for a jet lifer like me going slap full braid?
Slap full braid. Slap full braid. God bless you. If you're going slap full, that means you're sporting your braid. So it's important to get something that sticks out. People are going to recognize. You know what I mean? High yellow's good. I seen a pink that's absolutely outstanding. But if you go with like green or dark red, it's not going to stick out. They're not going to see your braid. Listen, run that dog. God bless you for going slap full.
Here's a question from Chad Knauer. What happened to the Zen Dog? Last we saw, they were painting the inside, and then I saw a video of you fishing it in the sail tourney. Where is the video walkthrough of the completed boat, or is it still in process getting finished when time and budget allow? Oh yeah, run that dog.
Now look in here. The Zen Dog, that's a special breed boat. That's something we did. We built that thing almost 5 years ago. It sits behind my partner's house. Neither one of us use it that much. Unfortunately, we're working most of the time, and that happens a lot with big boats. Now, the Zen Dog is a special boat. When we do take that thing out, we're doing tournaments, we're doing Bahama trips, we're doing swordfish trips. So far, the boat's been great. We've produced plenty of big billfish. If you haven't seen the white marlin, the blue marlin, the swordfish, and the tunas, the mahis we caught off that thing in some of the videos. Sorry for putting out so many videos. They're hard to get through, but the Zen Dog ones you can look at. So many of those big boats just sit around. Unfortunately, sometimes the Zen Dog does too. There's other stuff that I do. Now, we do that because we're working every day, and we can bring you that kind of footage on a consistent basis. Thanks for the question. Everybody loves the Zen Dog, but nobody more than me.
Here's a question from YouTuber Ryan Farooq. Do you catch snook off the beach also during the mullet run, or mostly tarpon?
Both. Now, there's certain days that the tarpon are going to be thick and jumping out of the water, and it's really hard to fish for snook those days because it's just like eye candy. It makes you want to do that. Then there's other days when, it's sandy and there's not a lot of tarpon running around. And then, you're fishing your bait in the trough and you start getting those big snooks. So, anywhere in between. Listen, during the mullet run, you can often sight cast a snook because they're so close to the beach and they're kind of lethargic, kind of just rolling down the trough. So keep your eyes open, and while you're tarpon fishing, and often you can reel your bait in real quick and get you a snook.
All right, here's a question from YouTuber Asher439. What pound test leader do you use?
It changes. Most of the time I'm using a 50-pound test mono leader. Now, if I'm fishing for smaller tarpon, smaller baits, and clearer water, I'll scale the leaders down. Like sometimes even when we're fishing the lights, we'll go all the way down to like 20-pound test. Now that is one of the few times where I recommend using fluorocarbon. But anyway, it changes. In the winter, we're fishing for those big fish down in Government Cut. Well, sometimes we step the leader up to 60 and 80-pound test just because the fish are so big and the fights are so long. So 50-pound test is a nice mid-range leader. I think that'll help you out. Run that dog.
Here's a question from YouTuber Chris Ellis. What is the best way to catch mullet, and what do I look for to find them if I don't have a boat?
Okay, if you want to catch mullet and you don't have a boat, two things you're going to need. You're going to need your decent cast net. I use a 7-foot, 3/8 mesh cast net, 1.5 pounds of lead per foot. Real simple. Then you're going to need you some snatch hooks. Now sometimes the mullet are off the beach. Sometimes they're in the creek. Sometimes they're in the intercoastal and they're thick, but they're far away from you. You can't use the cast net in that situation. Get your snatch hook and learn how to snatch your mullet. Thanks for the question. Run that dog and happy bait.
Here's a question from Desilu14, YouTuber. Hey Cap, going to be in Siesta Key, Sarasota for the weekend. I want to target some snook. What bait and tackle setup do you recommend for West Coast Florida fishing?
West Coast Florida fishing. As far as I'm concerned, here's what you got to do. Get you an East Coast pompano jig. Take that over there to the beach. Start chunking it around. You probably get you some small snooks. It seems like a lot of West Coasters are over there doing that, getting them small snooks. If you want to get a big snook, take what you can catch on the pompano jig. Put that on a bigger rod with a 5/0 circle hook. 5-foot, 50-pound test mono leader. Chunk it right back out there and see if you can't get something big. If you're lucky, you get your big snook, shark, ray, something good. Put something big on there. Don't be afraid.
Here's a question from Sam8Fish. Any suggestions for a surf shark rig? I'm out at the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and we already have happy bait everywhere. I got cut off earlier today with 250-pound cable.
Woo!
Any other suggestions? Sadly, we don't have much for tarpon, but the sharks and bull reds have been running strong.
Listen, I want you to contact two dudes. If you need to know about sharks, you need to know about getting through 200-pound cable and all that. I don't do a lot of that stuff. Mike O'Gorman on Facebook. Check him out. And Blacktip H on YouTube. Those guys are way into their sharks, and those guys can help you out. That's real guys helping real guys. Thanks for being part of the social network, and I hope that helps. Good luck with them sharks up there in the Carolinas.
Here's one from Jorge Bertrand from YouTube. I got my tide chart. I see when the high tides and low tides are. I still don't really get when the best fishing for snook is. If, let's say, high tide is at 9 p.m., when should I really be focusing my fishing?
Okay, that's a pretty specific question when you talk about 9 o'clock being high tide. Well, if you were going to fish a tide at 9 o'clock, I would get there about an hour and a half early. And then I'd fish about an hour and a half late, and I'd try to get the whole swing of the tide. So when you're first getting there, the tide's moving, it's rolling through, and you can fish that. Then it's going to slow down, you'll be able to fish that. Then it's going to go slack, you're going to be able to fish that, and then it's going to start going the other way, you're going to be able to fish that. That'll increase your odds anytime you can fish a tide like that. But look at here, there's no right and wrong answer for the tide. The tides will work if you try to develop a rhythm. Those tides will work on your rhythm. For instance, if you may be fishing a spot where there's a ton of tide. Maybe it's outgoing, but you're fishing like a flare hawk jig or a spool tech, something that gets down to the bottom. Now that's going to be a completely different tide than, say, something you want to fish like with a dead bait. Like with a dead bait, you probably don't want that tide flushing through so hard. So on and so forth. It's going to change on you. There's no right and wrong answer to tide. Go out there, snook fish, develop a rhythm, and you'll know the tides will dictate to you what's best.
What is a good, this is from Skies Eclipse, he's a YouTuber. What is a good reel to use for snook?
Now looking, I've done videos on the best reels for snook. The best reel ever made for snook, now this is fact, not opinion, is the Bantam 50. Alright? Get you on eBay, search for your Bantam 50. I've had guys like this one right here. Guy on my social network found this for 50 bucks. That's a score, pal. Look for one of these, pat yourself on the back. I've seen guys pay up as much as $100 for one of these things, and in my opinion, it's pretty much worth it because there's not much you can buy for $100 that's going to compete with this. If you've got some time and you got some patience, look at eBay, look at Craigslist. If you see the Bantam 50, get one of those. Best snook reel ever made. Fact. Thanks for asking the question. That's Captain Jeff. Best snook reel ever made.
Here's a question from Outdoor Boys 100. What's the average size tarpon you get on the beach this time of year?
The average size tarpon we catch on the beach during the mullet run are fairly big. The smaller fish are between 50 and 65 pounds. Average fish, I would say, is about 75 to 90 pounds. And if we get one over 100, we call that a real honker. Everybody's fired up. Tim O'Connor's got 2 of those, or 3 of those, in the last 2 mullet runs. The guy's won the mullet run. He's won the happy bait season the last 2 years in a row. Major fish. I think one was around 130 pounds. The other one maybe 120. Tim O'Connor. Back-to-back happy bait winner with 100-plus pound fish. But figure you're going to get a lot of 60 to 80 pound fish.
Here's a question from a guy you know. He's a YouTuber, Supreme Fishing.
Right.
What happened to pre-pod?
Woo! That's a loaded question. It's a sore subject around here. Pre-pod never really kicked in that much this summer. We got a little bit of pre-pod back in June, the beginning of July. Looked like it was going to kick in nice. We'd hang out on the beach, catch a bunch of snooks this summer, relax. And it just never happened. I understand it's been fairly good from Boca North. I've heard some decent reports, down like in the Hullover area. But pre-pod was pretty weak in Broward this year. A little disappointed about that. And all we can do is wait for next year. Happy bait's right around the corner. Let's look forward to what's positive. Let's keep off the negative.
All right, here's a question from YouTuber Tyler Davis. So I fish about 3 times a week, but can never manage to catch snook or tarpon. I've used all the different tackle, lure, and bait selections, but can almost never catch them. What would be your number one tip for snook and tarpon fishing?
Whew. Somebody that fishes that often that never catches snook and tarpon, whatever you're doing, change. Because it's not working. If you're fishing that much, basic fundamental way of catching those big fish, get you good dead bait. Some places they use ladyfish, some places they use mullet. a nice fresh dead bait, fish it on the bottom, and be patient. You should be able to start picking off fish. If you can catch live bait, use big live bait. You should be able to pick off a fish. This winter, you know, when it gets cold out, they're gonna eat shrimp and crabs, fish some bridges. You should be able to catch one. I'm not positive what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, switch it up. Check out my videos. If you can't learn from that, I don't know what to tell you. Good luck out there and happy bait.
Here's another question from Chad Canauer. In the canals, do you usually slow troll your mullet, or do you ever sit still and flatline them off the stern bow and let the tarpon come to you?
Well, here in Fort Lauderdale, we often keep the boat moving. Boat traffic's really tough. You can't really sit in a lot of spots. And because of that, we don't anchor up that often. Now, in some of the other areas, sometimes we'll anchor up and wait for them to come to us. But not that often do I sit on the anchor. Dead bait fishing, almost always we're on the anchor, and it's a good way to wait and let them come to you. When I'm using live bait, we're usually drifting or we're trolling slow. So hope that helps you out. And not to say that you can't catch fish the other way, that's just not the way I do it. Thanks for tuning in to Captain Jeff Show this week. Listen, the social media is big. Tune in to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Ask your questions. This thing was overwhelmingly good. People asked a ton of questions. There's only so many questions I can answer in one session. We'll make this a monthly thing. Participate in the biggest social network in saltwater. Thanks for tuning in to Captain Jeff. Run that dog.